Mike Scarborough knows LSU, Tiger Bait, with us, Sikkim 365 Radio and 365 Sports. Okay, I have the stopwatch on. When do you have to leave?
I'm good. Plans change as long as you need me.
Well, they changed okay, though, right? This isn't bad news.
No, good news.
Okay,
good news.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right, so LSU flipped a quarterback that was committed, I think, to Purdue, Collins. What did that mean for the class they're in right now?
I think it's very good. Ricky Collins afforded himself very well at the Elite 11. One of the most accurate throwers there, right here in Baton Rouge. In fact, I can walk to his school from where I'm talking to you from right now. And I think he's got loads of potential. A lot of people will ding him a little bit for his long throwing motion, but he's a heck of an athlete. He's been the best baseball player, basketball player, and football player at a 5A school in one of the toughest football districts in the South in 5A and since the 9th grade. So you're talking about 6'2.5", about 195 pounds, and I think they're getting a very good one. And there was a lot of other schools that were trying to get on him late as the quarterback started to drop, and LSU's happy to have him.
Okay, so he might be the quarterback later, but who's going to be the quarterback now?
I tell you what, I could sit here and say today that I think it's Jaden Daniels. I can make a case tomorrow that it's Garrett Nussmeier. I'm not willing to make the case that it's Miles Brennan, but I'm starting to lean towards Jaden Daniels. But I think that the odds of us seeing two quarterbacks play against Florida State in the open are reasonably high.
Is that good news or bad news?
It could be both. It could be. You have a package for Jaden Daniels because he's the more athletic and can run and do things on the move, or it could be where your starter falters and you've got a short hook on him and you pull him. That's the worry when you come out of spring with three quarterbacks, and we're not counting Walker Howard, who they want a red shirt. But with three quarterbacks, nobody's separating themselves, and anybody who's been to practice or saw them scrimmage or went to the spring game can make a case for all three. Do you have a bunch of guys who are barely average? Or is there a couple of guys who can give you average or better play? I don't think we're going to know until the season starts.
When we talk about Oklahoma, we talk about the amount of turnover that they've had this year. And while everything appears good, they got a good coach in Brent Venables. They got good transfers. Everything appears to have at least stopped the flooding in the boat. But you don't know because there's a lot. Does LSU feel that same way to you? Like, even though Brian Kelly is clearly an excellent coach, he's organized a lot of things there that haven't been done in a while, but there's so much turnover. Do you have just kind of no idea how this is all going to go early on?
I just think from what we've seen in spring and so far in fall camp, the organization and then the efficiency which they do everything that they do on a daily basis. Now approaching 20 commitments for the class of 23. And one of the top 10 recruiting classes in the country already. And knowing what they've got working for 24, I like his staff from top to bottom. I think the trend is extremely high for Brian Kelly and his staff right now. And now with this new rule where you're not bound to 25, they already had a very good portal class on top of holding together Orgeron's class and building a bit on it. But now where they can go and get to the 85 and sign maybe somewhere around 35 or 36 kids, and, that being a mixture of high school and portal, I think LSU can get real healthy in a hurry. So, but, then the debate becomes you pencil in Alabama as number one in the West, and I think 2 through 6, I think you're tossing balls up in the air because everybody else has issues. And so, I think there's going to be a lot of SEC schools, including LSU, at the end of the year. They're going to say, you know what? I think 8-4 is probably the sweet spot. but I can see people predicting 7-5. But I think either way, if you're at 7-5 or 8-4, where you could be saying something like, they lost 3 games by a combined 11 or 12 points or something like that. The difference is all the other teams that are similar to LSU, where they've got multiple spots where you're questioning their talent, LSU goes to those places on the road. They go to Florida, who's got issues. They go to Auburn, who's got issues. You can talk about Texas A&M and their defensive line. So I think that's where the thing comes in. Tennessee comes to Tiger Stadium. The Vol fans are as nutty as A&M when thinking that they're something that they're not. So we'll see how it all plays out.
So they had the once-in-a-lifetime team. They won the national championship with Burrow and Chase and all that. Aranda, of course, defensive coordinator. And then everything, guys went left and right. Orgeron's gone, and next year was a nightmare. How much all in are LSU fans with the change, and is everybody happy where they are right now?
Oh, everybody's happy, but how quick can that change?
In a heartbeat with a loss.
And if they get past Florida State, they don't go on the road again until October. They don't go, and if you want to call the Superdome a road game. So, if they can, get be undefeated coming out of September, I think the stage gets set very well. They get some momentum. That offensive line comes together. I think combined with what the draft did to that national championship team, then COVID, then portal, some kids in the program that were cancerous. I think this program can be on its way in a hurry. There are some very, very good football players. There's some real parallels between what Brian Kelly has inherited and what Nick Saban inherited from Jerry DiNardo in 2000. You look at what Saban inherited from DiNardo. There was a ton of NFL players that DiNardo left him. And so I wonder at the end of the year, we're not looking at that and saying some things are very similar because while the numbers are down, LSU's in the mid-70s right now. I think 75 scholarship players. And there's going to be some more kids that you're probably going to see hit the portal. There's still some very, very good talent there. They just got to stay healthy because what I was getting at is the karma for injuries. There's another component that you saw in the last 2 disastrous seasons was LSU was just beset by injuries. We've never seen anything like it. And so I think that's going to be, something to watch out for. Right now, knock on wood, the only injuries that we're talking about with LSU players is Jack Besh with shin splints, Garrett Nussmeier with an ankle, and Brian Kelly says he'll be back either today or tomorrow at practice. So if they can avoid catastrophic injuries, which I think they're due after what they've had the last 2 years, I think they're going to be in darn good shape to meet expectations, which I think are 8-4. But I think the difference between the teams that maybe hit 9-3 in the SEC and 7-5 is going to be paper thin.
Mike, you mentioned like some cancers on the team and all that. Some of that is national championship hangover, right? Where everything was so good, people get entitled, people think they're hot stuff. Does Brian Kelly coming in so quickly after that, as opposed to 5, 6, 7 years of kind of that entitlement growing, help them turn that corner quicker out of that?
I think so. Then look, you had guys like Eli Ricks, who's now at Alabama, a bunch of me guys that you recruited from out of state. I think that's why you saw early on with them when they were going to the portal that they were looking for Louisiana kids to come back, kids that didn't get initially offered by LSU but had success at either mid-majors like UL Lafayette, et cetera. 2 defensive backs from Arkansas coming home that played. So Kelly immediately came into the program, and the cumulative grade point average in one semester of the team went up like 4 points, like 0.4 in one semester. So that's a big part of it. He's demanding, and the looks in these kids' faces, they want, I don't know if use a bad word or they want the daddy guy. They want the guy who's going to say, "This is how we're going to do it," or else. And they've all they're loving it. Football players want that type of structure, and that's your successful programs have it.
Yeah, sometimes when people think of he's a player's coach, that doesn't mean they're loosey-goosey, but some might be. They might be a little bit more of that. But in the end, yeah, I've had many players have said, no, I need that. Whether his teammates need it or not, they need to have someone with a thumb on their forehead a lot. Now, you wish you didn't have to do that, but it's part of growing up and part of so much going on with student athletes this day and age. Hey, LSU had a player enter the portal. I asked you this, but I'm going to ask it on the air. A defensive back, a pretty good player, at least out of high school, entered the portal, and somebody asked me, is that someone who Dave Aranda recruited? Just to clear that up, you said that's not somebody that Aranda recruited when he was at LSU?
Yeah, Demario Tola. No, he wasn't, because he was only a freshman last year.
Okay, all right. Do you wish Dave Aranda was the head coach at LSU right now?
No, I don't. But I like Coach Aranda. Y'all know better than me, but it's. I'm gonna be real curious to see what Baylor does this year. I think they could spoil a lot of people's years. Depending on how the ball falls for them. But I like Coach Aranda.
Well, and I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it because, my God, no, he's not going there. He wasn't interested in there. Not even sure if they reached out to him or not. He's perfect where he is right now, and hopefully for the long term as well. And I think that Brian Kelly, despite sometimes people taking pot shots at him or whatever, he has won. Am I right? Has he won everywhere he's been?
Absolutely. He is the winningest active coach in D1 football. He is the winningest coach in Notre Dame history, and LSU went and took him away.
From Notre Dame?
Yes.
Like USC took somebody away from Oklahoma. You don't see that often when blue bloods.
But could you ever imagine in your lifetime that the winningest coach in Notre Dame history would leave Notre Dame for a school like LSU? And what does that say about Notre Dame?
It says a lot about LSU, and it says, it says a lot about where LSU has come since then. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because I really don't think it was a money thing. I think Notre Dame could have gotten the ballpark. A guy who's going to uproot at 60 years old and come down to Louisiana, culture shock, a born and raised in Massachusetts. But there's one thing that we're seeing, and, of course, Jay Bramlett was the punter at Notre Dame, and now he's at LSU. And he had a very revealing interview. He was awesome the other day. We got him for an interview. And he's on the Ray Guy list with 2 years of eligibility left. There's a lot of things that buttoned-up persona that he had at Notre Dame that maybe you have to have as the coach at Notre Dame that you can shed in South Louisiana. And he absolutely has. I just get astonished by the regional and national media. I was there in the Assembly Center when he came out at mid-court and allegedly talked in a Southern drawl, and I'm a guy who notices everything. I didn't even notice that. That was only the people out of state that noticed that. I thought nothing of it. I think most people hear that way. And then we woke up the next day and all the national pundits and we're having fun with him or taking him to task. But I think he's absolutely loving it here, and I think he's a fit. I mean, the best coaches in LSU history in just about every sport were carpetbaggers or guys who came from out of state. A Jewish baseball coach from Miami, Nick Saban from West Virginia, which I can consider the North, and came from Michigan State. Dale Brown from Minot, North Dakota.
Yep.
On and on.
Yep. Hey, by the way, you made a comment that you think Baylor might spoil some people's seasons. You know that they're the favorite, right?
Well, ask some of those blue bloods if they think they're the favorite.
Well, ask those blue bloods how they did against them last year when they were the number 8 team in the. And I'm having fun with that, and that's again, part of it is getting there, and what Dave Aranda and his staff discuss is, can you sustain it? Can you clear it and go back and do it again? That's how you become, over the years, decades, a blue blood. You have to do that consistently over the years. Man, it's always great talking to you, man. All right, does Kelly like jambalaya or gumbo?
He said his favorite so far is crawfish etouffee and char-grilled oysters.
Oh, God.
Well, there you go.
Well, Paul,
So
what's the name? What's the hotel?
Dragos is
Dragos,
Yeah. So Bramblett comes. We asked him what's the difference between Notre Dame, and he basically flat out said the food in South Bend sucks. So every one of these guys comes down to Louisiana, and the food just wipes them out.
Yeah. There's no competing.
It's very tempting. No, it's incredibly tempting. It's unbelievably tempting.
And by the way, that is always the deal in recruiting. When we write our recruiting updates and we're talking to kids who come in from out of state and they come with their parents, when you say, well, what was your favorite part of the trip? You can book it one of the top 3 things, whether it's the facilities or getting to know the coaches. They're going to throw in something about the food. It happens every time. So that's a recruiting tool.
There was somebody in the chat room that mentioned, and I've seen Notre Dame and those who cover Notre Dame mention this, that at Notre Dame they were getting the 3 and 4 stars. LSU gets the 4 and 5 stars, correct? And is Kelly? Can you see that now? Is that already something? Yeah.
Absolutely. So while we're sitting here saying this LSU roster is not what you typically expect from an LSU roster, and the DB, when we talk about what are the weak links, defensive back, of course, LSU's DBU, the defensive back spot is the main focus. But I think Brian Kelly's out there saying, man, these people think this roster is subpar. He's probably looking at it saying, this position is better than the one we had at Notre Dame. This one's better. This one. But the difference between what you have and what your SEC West counterparts have and what you need to get to Atlanta the first week in December and what you need to go to Premier Bowl games or be a contender for the playoffs is the difference makers. Because everybody in the West has 4 stars and 3 or 4 or 5 stars in every class. So, that's how it rolls. And so, there's no Derek Stingley. There's no Patrick Peterson. There's no Tyrann Mathieu or Morris Claiborne, and on in that secondary. And so I think that's where the difference is. But I don't know how many of those guys that Brian Kelly had on an annual basis at Notre Dame, whereas LSU's used to having them every year.
From A100. Hey, Mike, there's good food up here, too. Enjoy your heat and humidity. Oh, you have.
Well, I always tell y'all, I talk to Jason Howell, and every time I go to East Texas, it seems like Louisiana's getting more and more encroached into Texas.
It is.
Y'all got bull crawfish everywhere, so y'all got all our food as well.
And I hope we can get it even closer. We got some great places. There was basically one Louisiana Cajun-style restaurant, I think, when I moved here, and it's on the Brazos right there. And it's kind of
more of a
tweener.
hybrid.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But now there are 5 to 8 places that have now opened up with the great Cajun food and the Louisiana style food, and I'm here for it. Mike, we love you, man.
Y'all send some of those brisket barbecue places, and then we'll have an even trade.
Right, we'll do that.
I think
for
that's
a biscuit.
Good.
Yeah, okay. Send us 4 Louisiana Cajun restaurants for one barbecue restaurant to be named later. How about that?
All right.
I love it, man. Thank you.
Mike, I'll be calling you on Monday. We got to talk Better Call Saul.
Oh, yeah. I've got some real theories about it, but so far I knew Carol Burnett was going to be in there, but I had a whole different idea what she's going to be, but looks like she scuttled the whole ship.
Yeah, she did.
Thank you, buddy.
Yeah.
Mike Scarborough.
All right, have a good weekend.
Full throttle, hair on fire, LSU, and I know that some of you are just not real happy about the food stuff, whatever. And